Williams, and today I'm talking about microaggressions in the workplace. Psychology Today states that Black people experience more microaggressions and more harsh microaggressions than any other racial group. How do you handle them? So I want to share some things with you that I haven't been overtly public about before because it has taken a while to process these workplace microaggressions. Um, in 2018, and I live in Las Vegas, I took a position at a mental health agency that serviced predominantly Black and Brown clients. And I originally applied on Indeed for a group facilitator position. And when I was contacted by the HR director, she said she wanted to talk to me about an LGBTQ coordinator program person to coordinate and start and develop an LGBT program for this agency. And I met with her and the comptroller, two Black women, and it really sounded encouraging. Who was not present was the executive director, a a white woman, um, and she was the executive director. And when we met, maybe the third day of my first week, she did not seem really pleased with the hire. And she said, I really need people to bring clients in. Well, that's something I've done for, over 20 years, and I wasn't trying to be out recruiting clients. I was very excited about bringing programming and connections for members of the queer community who, because of a further marginalized and disenfranchisement, needed the services the most. So, um, I went about doing my job, and then 2 months in, I still had not received mileage. And when I returned from a meeting from across town, um, I asked the executive director was in, and I asked her to stop by my cubicle so that we could just debrief this meeting, which was with the mental health holder group here in Vegas. So, the state mandates come down through them, and they make sure that folks are following the guidelines, et cetera, et cetera. And so I, shared what happened at the meeting and told her how I thought it would be beneficial for her organization to become like very visible at these meetings because there's a lot of good information disseminated. And I also told her that I needed my mileage. And she looked at me and she said, I pay my employees well. I don't pay for mileage. And I said, well, I absolutely disagree with that. I've never worked for a nonprofit agency in almost 3 decades that did not pay mileage reimbursement. This is my car, it's wear and tear. You have vehicles here. You didn't make any of those available to me, which means I'm running across the city back and forth in my vehicle for your business. And I need my mileage reimbursement. And she, had brought her husband to her cubicle with me. He was often, on the premises. She didn't come alone. She brought him, and she turned away and walked back to her office and cut my final check, which she left with the HR director to give to me, and she closed her office door. I was dismissed. I said, okay. And I went as soon as I could the following week, as soon as I could get in, to open a case with the EEOC here in Vegas. Now, this is a federal agency charged with um, looking into and not allowing or disallowing discrimination in the workplace. So you go, you have to wait, and then you get a number and somebody gives you a phone call. And so when the EEOC person called me, a gentleman, we had about an hour to 90-minute conversation where I answered a lot of questions. He asked me about, the job and what had happened, and why did I think that I had a case. What did I believe caused the discrimination? And I explained to him that while I was hired as the person coordinating this LGBTQ program, that I was not given any supports. They didn't have the space worked out well. So for the first 2 or 3 weeks, I was sharing space in the office with the comptroller. She was very gracious in doing that, but that was her space. I couldn't get the supplies that I needed. I couldn't get copies to go to meetings when I was talking to people. So I was really pulling on all of my resources of 25 plus years of working in the mental health field to make this happen for um, this organization with this high population of Black and brown clients who would at times in the mornings when I got there, they would be getting ready to go into a group session, and so they would be outside having their morning meditation, like 6 feet from the door, like very close to the entrance of this facility, and then going into the meetings high. Now, I am a proponent of cannabis. I use it, but I don't think that that was an appropriate setting, and I don't think that that set a good tone for people that are there to get help. But she allowed it. And so the EEOC officer, did the intake interview, and then he mailed me a report based on what I told him. And what he wrote down, I'm going to try and include here as a screenshot. But he summarized what I told him quite incorrectly by saying, quote, I have been employed by Dynamic Minds Services since on or about February 1st, 2018, as a program coordinator, business development, community outreach representative. On or about March 28th, I was discharged. I believe I was discriminated against on the basis of my sex, male, for not conforming to societal expectations of how men are expected to present themselves in my physical appearance, actions, and or behaviors in violation of Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. In addition, I believe I was discriminated against because of my age, over 40. But I believe, he has a grammatical error. That I believe is in violation of the Age Discrimination in Employment Act of 1967 as amended. I looked at that and I was like, what? First of all, I told him that I am a queer Black womanist. Now, if this officer of the Economic Employment, what is it, EEOC, Opportunity Commission, does not understand that queer means queer, I never once said that I was trans. I never said that I was born a boy. I never said I was trying to be a man. I was born a girl. I am a woman. And I was just outdone. So here I am, terminated with no recourse because I've only been there 2 months. So there's no unemployment for me to pull from. And insulted, embarrassed. And then I go to the EEOC and I'm told I'm a man. And so I would not sign off on that letter. And they did not change it. I asked to see the supervisor. He sat down with me. He apologized for his employee for what he wrote, but it wasn't amended. They didn't change it, and so I wouldn't sign off on it, and so they would not open my case. But guess what? I believe I have a case now against the EEOC, who is seemingly untouchable, but the God I know rights wrongs. And my former boss has, she, right after I was terminated, a couple months later, she was charged with Medicaid fraud. So what she, for thousands of dollars, I think she has to pay back like $500,000. She was supposed to do some jail time, 12 to 24 months, but she got probation for 2 years. You know how that works for some people. Even when they do wrong, they still kind of get a little more leeway than others. But I really felt like I sat on this long enough, and that 2022 in February, I was just moved to speak about this. First of all, I'm seeing so many social media posts about microaggressions and how people are having to make split-second decisions on how they handle these microaggressions, which are really attacks on your mind, body, and spirit. And then they come off like, from the person that's giving off this racism, oh, I didn't mean anything. Or, like my former boss, this is my stuff, this is how I do it, and I treat people however I want to. And you can go online yourself, Google the organization, and see what other people have said about working in that space. It was absolutely toxic. And when you are a survivor of childhood trauma or any type of trauma, there are certain things that will trigger. And somebody getting in your face talking mess is one. And there are times when you just have to make a decision, like, that person is clearly on some other stuff. I'm gonna let it pass. I just don't have the emotional capacity to deal with that, and I'm not gonna deal with it. Or it gets under your skin so hard and so tough that you have to say something. And if you're in the workplace, you have to balance that, because they will flip it and you'll be the one being carted out in handcuffs, right? And maybe with them then trying to sue you. I believe I have two cases here. And as much as I hate being in any type of courtroom or courtroom setting, this is important enough um, that if somebody takes this case, we're going for it. Because microaggressions are wrong and I'm just not here for them. So if you are struggling with this, I really encourage you to grab the freebie, Handling Microaggressions Like a Boss with C. Imani Williams, um, and just work that tip sheet, because we have to be aware and we have to be alert and we have to be on guard, because that is the real world. When you are working in these spaces where the racism may be permitted from the very top, which means if it is coming down from the top, everybody in that picks up that culture, and those that choose to throw microaggressions do so even more. And you have to protect your energy. And if you need that job, you need to protect your job. So just be aware. You have a choice in how you handle it. Get you some tools for your toolbox. If you're struggling with this, if this is something that you go home and think about, if this is something that you just do whatever you have to do so that you don't think about how you're being treated at work, um, and it's bothering you, grab the freebie, work the freebie, get you some tools, um, and be peaceful. All right. That's it for now. One love.